Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Astacha Deshatarine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Astacha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, 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 Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari, Kunja Bihari, Gopi Janananda, Giridharadhari, Gopi Janananda, Yasodhanandana, Rajajanandana, Yamuna Tira, Vanachari, Yamuna Tira, Vanachari, Giradha, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Shri Shri Gauratai ki Jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki Jai, Shri Radha Govinda Madhava ki Jai, Shri Radha Paraseshwara ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai, Shri Nitai Sati Sutta ki jai, Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gora Premanandi, Shri Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Marathon ki jai, Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Grand, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sanyavadi Pastichade Shatana. Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody. I don't know your calendars around the world. In different places the calendar sometimes is different as far as the dates go. Tomorrow here in France, we're in France, I have to be a little bit quiet because we're inside an apartment block and most French people are fast asleep at this point of time. On Sunday morning at 9:30 is the middle of their night, basically, especially around here. We have to be a little quiet. I hope you can hear. But tomorrow here is Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj's Tirupal. And it might be today in some places, I don't know. Wherever you are, I see devotees from as far afield as Australia and countries in that part of the world. So it might be a different date over there. But tomorrow here, so Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, I thought today, rather than, partly because we are limited in time also, in terms of, I have another Zoom program at 11 o'clock. That's another 1 hour and 45 minutes from now. And I have to prepare a little bit for that one. So we were a little bit shorter today, I think. I thought we would talk a little bit about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj today, not so much about the usual story of his incredible accomplishments and his contribution to the world, and the history of his life and so on, which is wonderful to hear. Again and again we can hear it, but that you'll surely hear if you're tuned in to any classes on that particular day. But I thought we'd talk more about some of his lessons, some of the lessons which he not just shared with us, but lived by, and hope that we would also cultivate some of the necessary behavior patterns which are required if we want to actually to cultivate or develop our Krishna consciousness. Behavior patterns, maybe you could say, Yasyasti Bhakti Bhagavata Kinchana Vinayasava Tatra Samasata Sadho, that they may come automatically, favorable ones, as a devotee becomes purified, which is indeed true. It's a Shastric statement. But at the same time, if we're not conscious of etiquette and behavior patterns, etc., it can impair our growth. It can impair our relationships. It may even be related to offensive behavior. So when we do have the opportunity, especially, we should try to implement in our own lives. We can't force it on others, but as much as we are serious, to try to, let's say, be a little bit more Krishna conscious, a little more self-conscious in our behavior, understanding, a little acting with knowledge of what's actually going on. Most etiquettes, most behavior, Vaishnava behavior, is based upon actually understanding. It's not based upon, some dogmatic restrictions, just simply to help us to control our senses or to humble us or whatever it may be. That's okay. But it's also based on reality, on knowledge of our actual spiritual existence, to help us to become freed of the misidentification which we have with this body, identifying ourselves as being whatever birth or character which we are presently covered by. These various coverings and we tend to act and respond according to what we judge is appropriate according to our coverings. Whereas, the pure devotees are seeing from a different angle, and they gradually try to help us to see things from a different angle, not just from the angle of me in the center, and my conditional nature being you could say, the method or the means by which I judge and interact with the world around me, which is, of course, is all pervasive as far as conditioned souls go. It's the only platform. I mean, they do follow authority, but that authority in this world is based upon the same principle of seeing through a conditional perspective. So I'm going to read today, in a few minutes, some quotations of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, and a little bit of discussion on their content and how we can try to see how appropriate it is in our own lives. But first, we'll chant some prayers of glorification. And I don't know if Rohini Nanda and Prabhu can test them out. They're in the songbook, so if we can find them, Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Pranati. That means offering our, our obeisance, our homages unto Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj, first to our Srila Prabhupada, and then to him. Om Jnanatimnandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. If you can put them on the screen and the devotees can follow along. In the song, these are from the Mangalacharna in the songbook. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Pradijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. Of course, we missed the first ones. We've done those now, but now at least we can chant the other ones. I think Prabhupada's pranams you all know, so we can chant now Prabhupada pranams first, and then we'll chant Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj's pranams. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Sarasvate Devi Gauravani Charine Nirvasesha Sanyavadi Paschachade Shatarine. Now to Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Sri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Iti Namane Shri Vashapanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhuyo Chula Premadya Shri Rupanoga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatardine Rupanuga Viruda Apasiddhanta Dvanta Hardine. Now we'll read the translations to those verses, beginning with the first one. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Varshabhanavi Devi Daita Das, another name of Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati, who is favored by Srimati Radharani, and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya's mercy, who deliver devotional service, which is enriched with conjugal love for Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation of Srila Rupa Goswami. I offer my obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya, who are the deliverer of the fallen souls, who do not tolerate any statement which is against the teachings of devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Hare Krishna. Okay, back on the screen, Rohini. Excuse me. Hare Krishna. And this is very appropriate every year during the Prabhupada Book Marathon, the Disappearance Day, the Tirobhav Mahotsav of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj happens to take place. It's quite early in the month, usually it's a little later. And also Gita Jayanti takes place during this month, which is another inspiration for every one of the devotees to enter deeply into the teachings of Lord Krishna to Arjuna, eternal teachings of the nature of the soul and how we can realize the nature of the soul and what the result of acting on that platform is, and ultimately realizing the result of acting on that platform. In Bhagavad Gita, it's taken further in Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, and so on. So it's very appropriate that these auspicious days are during this month. In France, this month is usually, like in most of the northern countries of the world, is the winter. It's quite cold. We're below freezing here in Paris. The devotees are going out on the streets. We're also trying to accompany them from anything from 4 to 10 hours a day in the cold. It's literally even during the day. Today it will be freezing during the day. Ice and frost. And in some places like Russia, it's minus 20 degrees or more. And the devotees are going out on the street distributing books. This is indeed quite astonishing. During Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj's time, there was not so much worldwide distribution of Krishna consciousness. It was mostly, not entirely, there was some in Europe, but mostly it was limited to the Indian subcontinent, which in those days included Burma, Bangladesh, Pakistan. So quite an extensive area, but still limited to that part of Asia. But the message of Bhakti Siddhanta was not limited. It's an unlimited message which applies in all time, place, and circumstance, no matter what our belief system is or what our belief system isn't, no matter who we are, what age we're in, or where we're from. The message of the Absolute is an eternal message. Practically, of course, amongst that is the importance of the Brihat Madanga, the book distribution. That's why a lot of emphasis was placed by Srila Prabhupada on this particular activity of distributing transcendental literature in different languages widely. Prabhupada, practically speaking, his main emphasis, his main endeavor was in this regard. Many other things also were there, and they're all very, very significant, and we don't say one's better than the other, but more emphasis was placed on this one. The most practical, we're not talking about sadhana, we're talking about practical methods of service and preaching Krishna consciousness. And that came from his Guru Maharaj Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati. In fact, if one looks at the Gaudiya Math logo, the mission of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, the printing press is on the Madanga, the drum, and the printing press of all things is on their logo. Things have changed. Modernization has brought about different techniques, but the same principle is there. The written word, it may come through social media or some other method nowadays, but it still comes through books also. So he termed this word Brihat Madanga. Brihat Madanga means the greater Madanga, which can be heard all over the world. As we're all sitting here today, and most of you may have a book in front of you even, we're reading Prabhupada's, what we call Prabhupada's books. These are the books of our disciplic succession coming through Srila Prabhupada. It's not something Prabhupada has his books, and Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj has his books, and Rupa Goswami has his books. It's the same book being, you could say, not adjusted exactly. It's exactly the same message, but evolving in such a way that it is appropriate, and the acharyas are able to do this according to time and circumstance, but the same message exactly. So these are the words of Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj. It's also interesting to note that in some of his temples where the printing press was there, the printing press and the deities were in the same room. At one end of the temple room was a printing press, and at the other end of the temple room were the deities. We may think, oh, that must be very disturbing to the deities. One might think like that if one's not understanding the principle. But the printing press, if it's printing books about Krishna consciousness, is like the heartbeat of Krishna. It sounds like his heart beating, pumping out the message, his words, pumping out his words all over in a written form or publication, which will go all over the world and hopefully will gradually change people's perspective. So now I'm going to go, having established a little bit, of course, Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj gave this instruction to our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, that if ever you get money, print books. And Prabhupada made that like his life's, focus, practically speaking. It was very, very much on Prabhupada's mind, amongst other things, of course. But that was like always there. No matter what other things were going on, book distribution seemed to come into the picture somewhere. As if that was like, the fountain. But it is, it probably described it as the basis. Books are the basis. Preaching is the essence. So I'm going to read a few things of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. I guess we could share the screen, but it would kind of break the incitement a little bit. I'll read one which is often quoted, but often you could say interpreted. But in regards to the mission of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj, yesterday on Sankirtan, we were in the city center of Paris, and it was packed. This time of year, Paris is extremely busy. And this main sort of drag. And so many people were on the street, including tens of thousands of maddened football supporters. Many of them were joining in with us in dancing crazily, which was nice. Some of them took books. But aside from that, there was parades going through the city center, protesting. This has to be done. This has to be changed. This person has to be removed. Stop the war. Don't stop this, mandatory request for masks or whatever's still going on out there. And so many protests. Stop killing animals was another group there, which was a little bit more mode of goodness, you could say. And things like that were going on out there on the street. France is famous for its strikes and its protests. It's part of life. And they want change. They're hoping that change will come for fulfilling their own perspective, you could say. And your perspective and my perspective, by the way, are not the same. As Prabhupada says in the Second World War, Mr. Hitler, he thought my form of sense gratification is best. And Mr. Churchill thought my form of sense gratification is the best. Of course, you could take it much broader than that, but the principle's there. Everyone sees it like that. And they tend to associate with people who have a similar perspective. And they'll fight with others or disagree with others or whatever, keep away from others who have a different perspective. And so that's the nature of this world, and that's what causes so much conflict within our own hearts, and especially amongst individuals or nations or religions, or whatever it may be. All religions are based upon this false perception of truth, thinking it's their own, let's say, angle only, conditioned angle, by the way, because most religions, in fact, all modern religions are Naimittika Dharma. That means that they are of a temporary nature related to a particular time, place, and circumstance. The ultimate goal behind it is not, but the identification, the practical applications are. Because people are so conditioned, they're so on the bodily platform of life. So instead of behavior patterns is kind of almost imposed upon the followers, although that's being totally dismantled practically nowadays. I'll get into the details, but so many things being so-called legitimized in the name of religion. Now, I'll just read this now. This is one in regards to how the world can change. Many people want change. Something's going to happen. It's not looking good. There's threats of nuclear war. There's threats of this and that. There's threats of depression, lack of food, problems in the winter with heating, too much high expenses on electricity, and so on and so forth. You can go on and on and on with the various anxieties or unsureties which we're facing. Well, people definitely feel, many people, not all, but many people feel the need is there for some change. So here's a quote from Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj: "The world stands in no need of any reformer." Well, that's a pretty radical statement. It doesn't need a reformer. So what does that mean? Well, we'll see. The world has a very competent person for guiding its minutest happenings. Very competent, absolutely competent. The person who determines that there is scope for reform of the world. That person who thinks, in other words, in simpler terms, you could say, the person who thinks that, they can reform the world, or we can reform the world. You vote for us, we'll change the world. So Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, such a person himself stands in need of reform. Is that person who needs reforming? Everyone does, but certainly those who think that they can reform the world, they're the ones in need of reform, particularly because they're seeing it through their own conditional perspective of sense gratification. The world goes on in its own perfect way. It doesn't look like it to me. And it certainly doesn't look like it for most people in the world. So, of course, this is all very mystical in one sense from the public's point of view. What do you mean it goes on in its own perfect way? Do you mean all this, cruelty and killing and suffering is perfect? Yes and no. It's certainly not perfect because the living entity is, in this illusory situation, subjected to no end of dukkhalayam shashvatam, sufferings of various kinds. But from the other point of view, it's perfectly arranged according to reciprocal karma, reciprocal desire of the living entity. We can't say, this material world, by the way, only exists because of us. Now, that doesn't mean we made it. It's like a child, a child demands this and demands that. The parents don't need it. And then sometimes the parents give it to them. Okay, if that will keep you quiet, here, you take this lollipop, take this toy or whatever it is you give to the kid. Try to keep him happy. But it's not that the parents need it. Similarly, those who are spiritually evolved do not need this material world and all the universes. They only exist because of the living entity's desire. And consequently, desire Krishna gives us material world because of our desire. And because of how we relate to Krishna's energy, just like in daily lives, how the child relates to that toy influences what happens next. So how we relate to Krishna's energy causes the effect of karma. So people are getting it. And it just goes on so expertly, so finely, beyond the ability far beyond the ability of any living entity other than the Supreme Lord to be able to fathom how all this is going on. We may have a theoretical understanding it's going on, but in terms of the fine detail, no one can explain exactly why this happens to this one, that one, this one, that one. Now we can just generally say it's your karma, but that doesn't satisfy most people. But life goes on, and suffering goes on, and various things go on. Sometimes we get a little bit of excitement, a little bit of temporary happiness, a shashvatam. But then Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, the world goes on its own perfect way. It's like in a prison. Does the government need a prison? Not really. Only because persons misbehave, therefore the prison is required. They provide a prison because some people behave in such a way that's where they belong. But it doesn't really need to be there if everyone's behaving properly. You don't need a prison. We tend to, again, it's tend to see things from our own perspective and not from a bigger, broader, and a lack of responsibility on our part. We tendency to blame everything around us and blame God, blame our family for what they did to us or didn't do to us, blame everything except for ourselves. Not that we want to go around blaming ourselves, but taking responsibility. We're responsible for our situation. Krishna is just reciprocating with our will and our behavior. When we perceive, no person can deflect or change it. No person can deflect it even by the breadth of a hair. Not even by the breadth of a hair. No one can change this world because everyone's under karma. Not for the breadth of a hair from the course chalked out for it by providence. But what do we do? Sounds like pretty providential. It's like we have no choice. We're just like, incompetent, just completely nothing we can do. We're just bobbing around in the material world of action and reaction. That's what it sounds like, but there is something that can be done. When we perceive any change being actually affected in the course of events of this world by the agency of any particular individual, we get very angry sometimes that this person does this and this person does that. That's normal. There's nothing unexpected, but it doesn't change things much. So when we see anything happening in this world, and apparently by the behavior of a Hitler or whoever it is nowadays, we have other personalities seemingly pulling strings. In France, they had Napoleon, and Mao Zedong in China, and Gandhi in India, and this one and that one around the world who seem to be making changes in the world that they live in, or we live in. Whenever that happens, we must know very well that the agent possesses no real power at any stage. None. That doesn't make sense. For the ordinary person, you could say. They want to exert their power to overcome them, so it must be power. Well, yes, it's power, but it's not theirs. They're empowered by Krishna. Krishna gives them, according to karma, individual, collective, you name it. But it's that power comes from Krishna. It's reciprocal. The agent finds himself driven forward by a force belonging to a different category from himself. Something inside just drives us in such and such a way. But because people don't understand themselves, they identify with you could say, whatever the forces are in the mental and intellectual plane, and think that that's me and I'm the doer. And this is, of course, Prakriti Kriyamani, Gunai Kamani Sarvasha, Hankara Vimudatma Kartaramiti Manyate. Krishna says, the foolish person thinks himself the doer of activities which are actually carried out by material nature. Just the soul isn't apart from this, it's superfluous to all this. Anartopashamam Shakshat Bhakti Yogaji, completely superfluous to these material goings on. Everything's controlled. Maya Jakshena Prakriti Sute Sucharachram. Maya Jakshena Prakriti Sute. Everything's controlled by Krishna, the material nature, and the material nature is, you could say, the doer. It's actually just the energy being, affected or controlled by the Supreme Personality of God through his various expansions. It's not independent. So ultimately, as Krishna is the ultimate doer, you could say. But he's reciprocating with the living entity's desire and their deserve. So people are driven on by their karmic conditional situation accordingly. The course of the world does not require to be changed by the agency of any person. There's no real need to change, he says, of the world. Our tendency is we think that things around us must be changed. And of course, we're always working for that, to improve things and adjust things. Unavoidable. It's the nature of, you could say, the living entity, to try to attain their constitutional position of happiness and eternity and knowledge and so on. So that's the intention. It's done, you could say, in ignorance. It's not done in knowledge. We don't really know what the solution is. And then he goes on to say, what is necessary is to change our outlook on this world. Now, this is the key line, you could say. Change our outlook. Now, that's a very significant, statement. And that's what religion is supposed to do, to change. And that's what devotional service is. I was thinking of something this morning. It was a little bit speculative, you could say, but it's a reality also. That sometimes we have a commitment or a complete, absolute opinion on some things. And we work hard to try to, gather support and achieve or move in the direction of how we see things, according to whatever reason it may be, due to modern emphasis of morality. It may be due to our interpretation of rights and wrongs. It may be due to, herd mentality, people around us. It may have many reasons. Or our past conditioning, of course, is always there too. And consequently, we're in this way, differences. It's like in ISKCON right now, there are many differences of opinion, which are creating diverse relationships, also divisive. Sometimes they divide. I mean, even simple things like veganism, for instance, it can create divisive relationships. It's something which was never even a subject during Prabhupada's time. It's become some kind of subject in society today. There are many others. The COVID issue, for instance, so much difference of opinion amongst devotees. Wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, taking the vaccine, not taking the vaccine, this thing, that thing, going out, not going out. So many various, conflicts were there. The Ukraine war, another conflictory thing, rights and wrongs, etc. It's hard to see a right there, but some people do. It's a conflictory thing. And what to speak of, issues more close to the heart, ladies giving initiation, giving a sannyas to, individuals, many conflictory things, behavior of seniors in our movement, many things. And believe me, the approach to these will be different in 10 years' time. We've seen it in our 51 years, endeavoring to try to take a little shelter of Krishna consciousness. The radical different angles of looking at the same subject matter through the course of history or through changing times that we go through. And a lot of it is affected by whatever paradigm modern society has emphasized. A lot of it is based upon religion. A lot of it is based upon proper behavior. There's a mixture of things. It's not like absolutely one or the other, no doubt. Everyone's trying to ascertain what is right and what is wrong. It's not that everyone's wrong. It's different angles of looking at the same subject, but it can create quite divisive results. So I was thinking that this morning. I was thinking of replying, just say, my answer was, please, Prabhu, I really appreciate your different angle of looking at things. But are you chanting your japa with your heart and soul? Are you actually hearing the holy name? Or are we going to sit around, just throwing differences of opinion at each other forevermore? The course of the world does not require to be changed. What is necessary is to change our outlook on this world. The scriptures declare, so if we really turn to scriptures, not just some interpretation of some statement, one statement here, one statement there, but the essence. The scriptures declare that it is only necessary to listen with an open mind to the name of Krishna from the lips of a bona fide devotee. Sounds pretty simple. Solution. As soon as everything else goes on, it will go on. And that's how it goes on. That's how the world continues. But that's not the solution to get us out of this way of looking at things, or out of this divisive or dualistic circumstance. As soon as Krishna enters the listening ear, he clears up the vision of the listener so that he no longer has any ambition of ever acting the part of a reformer of any other person, because he finds that nobody is left without the very highest guidance. It is therefore his own reform by the grace of God, whose supreme necessity and nature he is increasingly able to realize by the eternally continuing mercy of the Supreme Lord. Now that's quite a mouthful, you could say, a lot to digest. But basically, it doesn't therefore mean that we should sit around meditating, just chanting all day and night. Some people do. But that's not the real, it's not the weird one. Prabhupada said, I'm not actually doing anything as such. He would see himself as an instrument of the will of the Lord. And in the case of a devotee, everyone's being guided. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Deshajuna Tishtati. Accordingly, everyone in this world is being guided by Krishna. Perfect. They're getting perfectly what they deserve. And a devotee is tuned in on a different level. They're not just going along with the karmic cycle, providential cycle, so to speak, which can be predicted. No, they're taking shelter. They're taking shelter of a higher directive. Not that we're working it out, not that we're doing it. The more a devotee takes shelter of the holy name, the more a devotee takes shelter of the instruction of his spiritual master, takes shelter of the Shastras, the more they become instrumental in being, let's say, manifesting the will of the Lord. And that means the more they're seeing things from a different perspective. They're not seeing things which result in anger and greed and envy and lust and madness and illusion and so on. They're seeing things from Krishna's point of view more and more and more, through the mercy of the Lord, coming to us through the devotee, on coming through Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, and they try to act in that way. So therefore they become more and more instrumental in a real change in the world. It's a change of consciousness. Krishna consciousness. When our consciousness is pure and is based on, basically speaking, the will of Krishna, then things start to change. It's not that we're saving someone, we're making a devotee, we're distributing a book, we're opening a temple. We may say like that, but that's not really what's going on. Devotee, surrendered devotee is an instrument for things to change, for things to happen. And at least when we say change, at least to give people the opportunity and the facility and the environment where change is evoked. We're helping people to see things from a different perspective, not just from themselves in the center, but rather seeing things with Krishna more and more in the center. Then everything becomes harmonious, step by step. There's no more divisive. One sees what is actually, and even if there are different situations, which there certainly will be, and different individuals, religiosity also deals with this, although maybe not fully understood, but different persons at different levels, different things are important for them. It's important. I mean, they cannot possibly relate to transcendental behavior in the beginning. So therefore one gives moralistic principles, regulate doctrines, do this, like 4 or 5 times a day, you have to do it. Maybe you have to eat this at a certain time and do this at a certain time. All these things are there to help bring individuals to at least the platform of human life, at least that much. And then when one comes to the human platform, then one may be able to begin to grasp a little spirituality. But it's hard when we're still behaving like animals, uncontrolled senses and so on and so forth. Very difficult. Lord Chaitanya is very kind. Of course, he's given everyone, no matter who they are, the opportunity, even if we're not qualified. But still, if we want to really advance in Krishna consciousness, a certain understanding has to be there, not just chant Hare Krishna only. If we can only chant Hare Krishna, that might be okay, but no doubt it will be okay. But usually we can't only chant Hare Krishna because we have a lot of base samskaras or impressions in our heart which attract us to all kinds of nonsense or evoke, reactions when something happens around us which are not necessarily the right one or the Krishna conscious one. Let's read a few more quotes. You could deal with that one forever. That's a perpetual subject matter. Okay, on other subjects, I've just basically opened this a minute before we started to speak, so I didn't put it in order in any way. Another quote: "We are put to test and trial in this world." And I'm sure we can all attest to that one. There are so many tests and trials in our life, challenges within and without, which may challenge our faith even. Sometimes there's no doubt about that. We are put to test and trial in this world. Only those who attend the kirtan of the devotees can succeed. Sounds a bit simplistic, doesn't it? Is that all there is? Only those who attend the kirtan of the devotees can succeed. Yes. What does it mean, attend the kirtan? It means coming into the association of devotees, hearing and chanting. Coming into the association of devotees and hearing and chanting. It may not be quite what we interpret, going in the temple and jumping up and down like a crazy guy. And that's okay. I'm not saying that's not good. That's also perfectly good. But that's not all there is to it. You may do that and still be right in the center. Look at me, I'm dancing the best. Look at me, I'm the best Madanga player. Listen to me, haven't I got the best voice? I know more tunes than you do. There could be many things related to that, based upon one's own false ego. But when one comes into the real kirtan of the devotees and hear, it means we hear. It means we come there with a submissive hearing mentality. This is attending, attentive and attending. We're attentive to the kirtan of the devotees, especially the pure devotees. And when we read Prabhupada's books, when we follow his instructions and go on Sankirtan, or have kirtan at home or in the temple or whatever it is, we're trying to hear. It's not just Hare Krishna, we try to hear all the aspects, attentive to all the aspects of devotional service. Otherwise, the change will not take place in our heart. Tests and trials will continue to appear as tests and trials, which are sometimes very disturbing. But when we see things from a purified platform, imagine the tests and trials Prahlad Maharaj appeared to go through, but was he disturbed? No. Haridas Thakura? No. The great devotees are not disturbed by what appears to be an awful situation. Terrible. Tortured, literally torture. We can't even tolerate, a toothache, practically. Let's see. I'll jump over a few things here. Mentality of a pure devotee. Let me not desire anything but the highest good for my worst enemy. Interesting one. I mean, a pure devotee has no enemies, but some people appear to be acting as inimical towards them. But the devotee has nothing but the highest desire and the highest good for them. We see this in the form of Jesus Christ. We see this in Haridas Thakura, Prahlad Maharaj, all these great eternal associates of the Lord who appear in this world to help us, to guide us, etc., to show by example. They have no animosity towards anyone, no matter who they are. They're always thinking of the welfare of others because they're seeing them in that way. They're seeing them as Krishna's part and parcel. They're seeing them as, unfortunate, controlled by their karmas and their perverted understanding, their ignorance, etc. And they're always thinking of their welfare. That's why Srila Prabhupada preached this Krishna consciousness movement. Otherwise, why he had to come to the West? What a crazy place. He came here to try to give Krishna consciousness to persons who had no interest. But he evoked that interest by his behavior, by his purity, by the mercy of Krishna. Let's see, we'll go on and go on here. Those favored by God, this is not a statement which is necessarily, let's say, unique to Krishna consciousness. We hear this from other sources, but understood in a different way. Those favored by God find their paths set by thorns. Again, it's contradictory, you could say, to expectations of conditioned souls. They think those favored by God will be living a high life, with everything materially speaking improving, and no suffering in the material world, conflicts coming to an end, and everyone's got food in their stomach, and you're living in a kind of utopian situation. But it doesn't always seem to be like that. What it means, thorns. Their path, does it mean that Krishna loves to see people suffer? And you just have to resolve to the fact that, that means you're favored by God because you're suffering. Not necessarily. What it means, you could say a meaning, and maybe other meanings too. By thorns, those favored find their path set by thorns. There are always wake-up calls. Let's make it a little bit more practical. Wake-up calls, which come in terms of sometimes frustrations, sometimes, as we see, Prabhupada, just one thing comes to mind in teachings of Queen Kunti, a devotee realizes that those who are criticizing you, for instance, are your great friends. They're helping. They don't know, but they're pointing out something within our heart which is necessary to see and to take into account in our lives. They're actually acting in our favor. They don't know it like that. They may not think like that either. But from our perspective, thank you very much. I'll give an example. Francis of Assisi, a famous Christian saint. You may not saying you have to even go down that path, but one time I did read some things about Francis of Assisi in my life, and I was inspired. One time he was traveling in the south of France, I believe, or somewhere, maybe in Italy, on the back of a mule. That's like a donkey, on the back of a mule, and there was a man, with the mule, the rope, and they were going out traveling somewhere. And then the man who was with the mule, the simple man, he said, "Are you that Francis of Assisi that people talk about?" And Francis said, "Well, people call me by that name." He said, "Look, mate, you better be careful. You know why?" He said, I can imagine talking to a saint like this. He said, "Because people are talking a lot of good things about you, and you might get proud, mate. You got to watch out." And what a thing to say to a saint. pretty bold. And Francis of Assisi fell off of the mule and grabbed the man's feet and began kissing his feet and said, "You are my best friend. Thank you so much. Thank you." Quite something. We would probably say, "Who the heck do you think you are to talk to me like that?" Probably. "You don't know who I am?" Oh, come on. But no false ego. No false ego. Absolutely none. And that's the position of a purified soul. There is no false ego. He sees Krishna working through everything. We don't. We see something. Why is this person? I got to get my own back, whatever it is. Something crazy. Let's move forward. Life is for the glorification of topics of Hari or Krishna. If that is stopped, then what is the need to carry on life? People don't even start what they speak of stop. What is the point of life? When you ask yourself, honestly speaking, what is the real purpose of it all? Just a few years of flapping. Prabhupada describes it as a dead body flapping for a few years. Simply flapping. Moving around, doing this, doing that, getting at this, and excited, and then angry, and depressed, and whatever, all kinds of different emotions that we go through. What's the point of it if we don't become Krishna conscious? Not much point. Our span of life is short. Our life will be crowned with success if the body wears out with constant discourses on Hari. Whew. Wouldn't that be nice? Krishna's mercy, that usually happens for devotees who've left their body. Krishna reciprocates. Big topic, we could go on and on. We're here on earth. Listen carefully. We're here on earth not to work as artisans. Means like, sculptors, builders, like that, workers in that direction. Not as artisans for making big buildings with wood and stone, but to work only as messengers for the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Dev. Just messengers. Messenger is not the one, he just carries the message. He's not, when a postman comes, maybe you do it, and you open the envelope and you've got, a big fine in the mail or something for something you did. Do you punch the postman? You rascal! Boom! The postman didn't even know what was in the letter. Poor guy. Sometimes the dog goes for the postman and bites him. That's a fact. It's kind of dangerous job sometimes. But in reality, the postman has nothing to do with it. He's just a peon delivering the message. Prabhupada said, he said that about himself. He said, I'm just a peon delivering the message. It's not me. He would say many times, people say, why are you speaking like this, Swamiji? Prabhupada said, I'm not speaking like these. These are words of Krishna. It's not my words. I'm just speaking, That's the difference. A pure devotee speaks the words of Krishna, not his own interpretation or his own emotional outbursts. But he speaks the words of Krishna. I like that. But we're not here to show people, I did this, look at what I did. I built this temple. I did this. I distributed the most books. Look how good a cook I am. I cooked the best. Did you like my samosas today? On and on and on we go. But this is, it's childlike, very childlike. They'll be there in the beginning. It's childlike mentality. Pure devotees is not like that. They're just instruments. Whatever Krishna wants. Let's move on a little bit. Look within. Just a few more minutes, then I got to look within. I don't know if we ever do that, but look within. Amend yourself rather than look into the frailties of others. It's very easy to point out the shortcomings of others, but Bhakti Siddhanta didn't like that. Didn't like it. That you have to look at your own shortcomings. I'll give another example, which is not in this list here, by the way. It's a quote, I think it was in Jagannath Puri when he was there one time and he was walking with disciples. And if you've ever been to Jagannath Puri, you'll see there, like any holy place, more or less any place in India and other countries, in France also, you'll see beggars everywhere, whatever their motive is. In France, it's like that too. I mean, they're all over the place. But they're really, I'm going to say, not very spiritual beggars, but they're beggars nonetheless. And some of the disciples said to Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, should we reciprocate? Should we give them something in return? I mean, they're asking for something. And Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj said, yes. And why did he say yes? He said, because if you develop the mentality of not giving, you'll become a miser. Now, he was talking to his Grihastha disciples mainly at this point in time. You'll become a miser. So what does it mean? Are we going to give money? No. We give mercy. You give prasadam. You give something which will spiritually and materially benefit them. Give them money so they buy liquor? No. But you give prasadam. Okay, now how are we coming on to this one? So then the discussion, that's one thing. Discussion went on. Otherwise our heart may become hardened. Right now, the motto for the present marathon is live to give. So we try to give Krishna consciousness to others. And that's the highest thing. Whatever form it takes is another, but prasadam, at least we can give prasadam. It benefits them. So then someone said something like, shouldn't we use all the assets in the service of those in Krishna, no, in the service of Krishna? Yes. Again, moving on. But shouldn't we, exercise, like anger in a sense, like Hanuman or something, against those who are envious of Krishna? And Hanuman was like, ready to kill everybody in Lanka on behalf of Krishna, or Ram in this case, Arjuna, slaughtering countless warriors on the battle of Kurukshetra for Krishna. Again, a dangerous statement. Sometimes we see that. The reality is that they're willing to do that. And Bhakti Siddhanta said, yes. So, where are we going here? So then he turned around and said, well, but first we have to understand who is envious of Krishna. And this is the key line. And when I look at myself, he said, I find no one more envious of Krishna than myself. So to whom do I direct anger? This is looking within, not just looking without. There's a reason why these things happen. Because there's something in our heart which needs reform. It needs readjusting our perspective of the world. And of course, that includes our own perspective of ourselves. In this world of Maya, averse to the Lord, full of trials and tribulations, only patience, humility, and respect for others are our friends for Hari Bhajan. Okay, nail on the head. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 6 Shastakam, between other peace in the channel. This is why Kaviraj Goswami says you should wear this verse around your neck constantly. Remembering patience, tolerance, humility, respect for others. If we want to chant the holy name for Krishna's pleasure, purified, Sudanam, there's no way unless we understand this point. Lord Gaurasundar puts his devotees in various difficulties and associations to test their patience and strength of mind. Success depends on their good fortune. What is that good fortune? The good fortune is, of course, you could say, seeing things in the right perspective. That good fortune is one gets the good association of devotees who help us to see things in a Krishna conscious way, and not just somebody who sympathizes with our particular angle of vision, but somebody who helps to see things in a Krishna conscious way. When faults in others misguide and delude you, have patience, introspect, find faults in yourself. Know that others cannot harm you unless you harm yourself. No one can harm us. It's like Prabhupada said, no one can stop this Krishna consciousness movement. Only within. Only if we fight within, divide and so on and so forth, that will impede the spreading of Krishna consciousness. Nothing from without. They're the same thing individually. It's only when we see things wrongly within our own heart that harm can come. Otherwise, no one can harm us. I wish that every selfless, tender-hearted person of the Gaudiya Math would be prepared to shed 200 gallons of blood for the nourishment of the spiritual corpus of every individual of this world. That is, of course, meaning Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj said, we give our life, our very existence, for the welfare of others, just like Vasudev Dutt, associate of Lord Chaitanya, was willing to remain eternally in this world and suffer as long as all the other living entities can be delivered back to Godhead, because that will bring pleasure to Krishna. Our life, he said, is for the welfare of others, to somehow or another to try to awaken Krishna consciousness in other living entities. And a devotee will give his life for that. So thank you very much. I'm going to have to move along in a few minutes. And I would just request every one of us present today, I don't know what day, today or tomorrow or the day after, I don't know which day is Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj's Tirobhav, wherever you are. But I would request you to digest what you can from all of this, and to please try your little best to follow in his footsteps and share Krishna consciousness with others. We may not be big preachers. We may not have We may even be afraid of speaking of philosophy sometimes because we don't know how to answer the challenges. But at least we can try to distribute prasadam or some leaflets or books or whatever we can, more and more and more, especially on this day, just to show our gratitude to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj and our Srila Prabhupada, who is the, you could say, the life force of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj present in his present books, of course, as well, who came in on the order of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj to try to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So whatever differences may be there, and there are unending various divisive, you could say, perspectives which have entered into our society also, try to put the emphasis on that which will bring unity, that which will bring satisfaction to our acharyas, to Krishna, to preach Krishna consciousness to others, to try to take the instructions on our own self, not on others, to apply them in our own hearts, so that our perspective becomes a little bit clearer on things, not just a temporary perspective or a conditional perspective, mixed perspective, etc. Interpretation, some purification of the heart by hearing the holy name and by following the instructions of our acharyas to try to give this message, Yadadeki Tarakata Krishna Upadesh. Become a guru and try to spread this Krishna consciousness everywhere, whatever our shortcomings may be. Well, if we stop preaching, then what's the use? All these things do nothing but diminish the preaching. You can't convince the world on material, conditional arguments. Prabhupada said, we're not even preaching vegetarians, what to speak of veganism. That's not how Krishna consciousness was spread. It just embeds people in materialistic ideas. And that's just a natural thing that a devotee has compassion on animals. Krishna said, we offer him meat, we'll eat him, we'll offer him meat this very minute. But he doesn't want that. We do what Krishna wants, not what we want, or some herd mentality wants. And that he wants us to spread Sanktan movement, Pratibhati Achiyati Nagaradi Gram, Savatra Pachor Hoibi Mornam. He wants to spread the holy name to every town and village. That's the Lord's desire. It may not be ours, but if we want to be, our heart one with the Lord, we have to somehow or another, somewhere along the line, we have to start making our heart one with the Lord's, fulfilling his desire. Okay, I do have to finish there, and I really, what can I say? Please forgive us for any offensive I'm speaking out. But Hare Krishna, if anyone has any questions, one or two questions we can entertain. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, as a Thinger Guru, was a little bit, you could say, outspoken, strongly outspoken, in a time when you could speak strongly without getting lynched. Nowadays, you get lynched if you tell the truth, practically, because social media is so, almost you could say, its sole modus operandi purpose is to tear people apart, practically speaking, or destroy their intelligence. Pretty heavy statement when that's maybe my own passionate perspective. But we see the effect of what it does, and that's for sure. It's a great tool for preaching. It's also a great tool for being misled and so on, or disturbed at heart. We have one question. Oh, it's a very simple question. Where am I reading the quotes from? Well, I'm reading them from my computer. They are quotes which I gathered. And now others have put them all online. I produced a little booklet in 1992 or something, with many quotes of Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, and I still use the same quotes again and again. The booklet never went further than that, but the quotes are there. Many devotees now have put them out on different forums, various quotes of Bhakti Siddhanta. In those days, they were not very well known. That was 30 years ago. But now they're well easy accessible, just quotes of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Maharaj. You can find it if you look on Google or something. I'm sure there's hundreds more, and we just mentioned a few today. Significant quotes. You see these things, quotes of famous people. Well, this is not quotes of famous people. These are transcendental words coming through. An acharya, the most powerful acharya, the Bhakti Siddhanta. It's not just somebody who had an interesting perspective of life. All the rest are just called bunker. It's simply somebody's ideas. Hare Krishna. I hope if you have any problem, I can send them to you. I sent them out. I've printed them out a few times on the book around newsletters several times already. At least some. There's no end. It's an unending treasure trove of guidance from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. One day, a devotee will put Prabhupada quotes of Srila Prabhupada in a similar way, not just on one subject, but collectively. Maybe they've already done it. Okay, well, anything else? And there's nothing more. Get the Hare Krishna from another devotee here. Thank you. Hare Krishna to you as well. Hare Krishna to everyone on the whole world. So people, even if they don't know it, just somehow to get people to chant Hare Krishna Prabhupada. So that means they're spirit. We just before we went on book distribution yesterday. We had a good day. I didn't do anything much yesterday. There was like so many crazy things going on. Tens of thousands of football supporters swirling around us, around the book table and around Harinam. And it was like chaos, books going everywhere. People always coming and going, and this thing and that thing. It was like really being in many devotees said it was like being surrounded by rakshasas for hours. Just mad, absolutely mad. Screaming, flying all over the place, jumping up and down, banging, roaring. People were just wild. And and they always did an awful lot of, that's not a good word, tremendous amount of books amidst all that stuff. And how did I get onto that one? Can't remember. Oh yeah, just to get people to chant the holy name somehow or another, even if they don't. And we listened to this quote of Tamal Krishna before we went on Sankirtan. And Tamal Krishna, someone to put it on their Sankirtan group. And Tamal was saying about Prabhupada's books, he said, Srila Prabhupada told me personally, he said, even if all they do is touch the book, even if they don't read a word, simply by touching the book, their spiritual life has begun. So simply, Prabhupada said, just try to get them to touch the book and they will be benefited. These books are so potent that just by seeing them or touching them, they get benefited. So there you go. You don't get disheartened if you don't. But try to touch, you can touch the book to them as well, by the way. Even if they don't grab it, you can touch the book. So if they hold it there, that's great. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Just have the book. How to proceed to improve the quality of japa collectively and so change our consciousness and not focusing on changing our world. So what a beautiful, see all the realizations coming up just by a few words of Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj, which is fantastic. Well, how to do that? Well, if you really want to do it, don't worry, Krishna will give you as he's guiding everyone else according to their desire, he'll guide the devotee. It's not a mechanical thing. I don't think that someone else is going to do it for you. If we really mean that, then we have to show it by our endeavor. So Krishna will reciprocate with your endeavor. And if you want some immediate tips, join some of the japa shops or japa, whatever they're called. Mahatma Prabhu is notorious for that. He's phenomenal service, helping others around the world to take more seriously japa, for instance. But again, don't get back on this thing of thinking that someone else is going to do it for me. We've got to desire it within your heart. But in the association of those who have more, let's say, Krishna conscious approach to chanting the holy name, it can be evoked. So associate with those who have it. Mara, how will ISKCON after 10 or 20? How will be ISKCON? Good question. With present differences of opinion. Don't ask me. I would say to the degree that we take shelter of the holy name, the degree that we really Stop, pointing the finger at everybody else, for God's sake. You can't say. It's like the weather. How accurate is the weather report? They might be able to tell you what the weather was like an hour ago, but that's about as accurate as they can get, isn't it? I mean, weather reports are about as accurate as it is. The weather's already happened, and they tell you it was raining an hour ago. Thank you. They can't tell you what it's going to be in a minute's time, practically. We can only say, if we don't take this seriously, it's going to get worse. That's all. It's going to get worse. Someone's going to have to do it. But why not be that person who, be a part of the change instead of being part of the destruction? Because different devotees will see the change in different ways. They'll see it to establish, various forms. And as we said earlier on, at different stages, different things are important. But without the heart becoming very strong, it's going to be difficult. It's like you go to a kirtan mela, if you know what that is, where hundreds of devotees gather together to chant for a long time. And there's some leaders are there. Now, a lot of the devotees, every one of the devotees has got a different level of consciousness. Some are attracted very spiritually. Some are attracted by tunes, by persons, by the event, by social intercourse. Some are attracted if they can themselves be in the center, and so on and so forth. So all different types are coming together and seeing it, not say externally, they may say the same thing, but internally they have a different perspective of it, a different feeling within. But if the kirtan is very pure and the leadership is very pure, it will have an effect on everyone around them. Not just going to be, you and me, I'm better than you. Duality will go away in the presence of someone or presence of those who have no, like in Prabhupada's presence, God, was there so many differences during Prabhupada's time, but Prabhupada's purity would dissolve all this dichotomy or duality and duplicity, which was something we carry with us, and would resolve it, make it clear. Nowadays, who listens to who? Practically nobody. It's very difficult. You speak out, you become like enemy number one. On social media, mass speaking, mass makes right. I was writing to one dear sannyas god brother recently. He said, there's nothing you can do, Maharaj. Just focus on what is good, what you can do, and what you know is good. You can't change it. Now it's might makes right. Social media is just the hammer to smash knowledge. It can also give knowledge, but it's very good at smashing it too. Well, let's say smashing the Sankirtan, it can do both. But oftentimes it has a negative effect, so you'll be careful. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai, Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. We're going to do our best tomorrow. We might just be an instrument for one magazine to go out tomorrow. Who knows? It'll be a great success if one magazine should go into touch somebody's hand tomorrow on the Tirabhava of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj would embrace devotees when they come back from book distribution, even if they'd done nothing in terms of quantity or one magazine. You saved one soul. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru.
Many of you probably are now thinking twice. Maybe I should do something else. Well, listen.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
It all goes to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Guru, Hare Krishna.